I
The
don't
first
care
sign
what
that the
you
whole
think you
weekend was
heard.
about to
You
go
are
sideways hit
trespassing, and
Dean
I
like a
want you
slap the
thrown in
second his
jail
wife stepped
right
out of the
now.
bathroom with toothpaste still foaming on her lips and her phone
I don't
buzzing
care
like it
who
wanted
you
to
think
jump
you
off the
are,
counter
and this is
because
completely
quiet mornings
unacceptable.
never
You're
stayed quiet
breaking
in
the
Maple
law.
Creek Estates. And this one was already starting to smell like trouble. He was standing in the kitchen in his fuzzy socks, an old hoodie, making coffee like a man half asleep when the incoming dispatcher call lit up the screen, and the tone was so sharp it made his eyebrows jump. And before he could say anything, Lily waved a hand like, "Just answer it, babe." So he hit speaker with a greasy thumb from flipping bacon, and the moment the message came through, his whole chest went tight because the voice on the other end sounded official and stressed. "And way too serious for 7 in the morning, ma'am. This is State Dispatch. We received a 911 call reporting an unlawful occupant at Lot 23 Maple Creek Estates." The complainant identified the intruder as a woman named Lily Torres and is requesting immediate removal. Dean looked up at his wife like he just got told the moon fell out of the sky, and Lily just stared back, toothbrush still in her hand, like the universe was pranking her badly, and not even in a funny way, because she spat into the sink, wiped her mouth, and muttered, "Dude, you gotta be kidding me. I'm apparently squatting in my own damn house." And Dean stood there holding a spatula, feeling like reality broke in half because only one person in this HOA was crazy enough to pull a stunt like that. And her name was Karen Foster, the queen of yard inspections, the empress of passive-aggressive posts. It notes the woman who measured grass with a ruler and drove a white SUV shiny enough to blind an eagle, and she had absolutely no clue. She had just weaponized 911 against the woman who ran the entire state police force. Lily leaned against the counter, breathing slow and deep, like she was trying not to explode because she looked tough all the time. But inside, he could see the tired lines near her eyes from months of nonstop stress, and Dean's stomach twisted at the thought that someone had tried to humiliate her like this in her own home, a place she barely got to enjoy thanks to her schedule. He reached out, touched her arm gently, and asked, "You good, babe?" And Lily nodded once, but it was the slow kind of nod, the kind people do when they're not okay at all, and trying to find their calm like a soldier adjusting armor before stepping into the field. And then she straightened and said, "All right, let's get this over with," in that quiet commander voice that could freeze a room. They stepped out onto the porch, and the cool morning air hit them like a breath of truth. The cul-de-sac was too calm, too neat, the kind of calm that feels fake, like a movie set where everyone is watching from behind curtains, because in this neighborhood, drama spread faster than wildfire, and Dean could already feel a dozen eyes peeking through blinds. Kids' bikes were on lawn, sprinklers ticking across the perfect green grass. A dog barked somewhere down the street, but the peace wasn't real, not with the threat hanging in the air like static waiting to pop. Lily crossed her arms, mug of coffee in hand, standing on the porch like she owned the entire street, which she kinda did in spirit, and Dean could see the flash of blue sirens at the very end of the cul-de-sac before they shut off, and the patrol cars rolled in quiet and steady like they already sensed they were about to walk into nonsense. 2 officers stepped out, young, one jittery, older, one tired, the kind of tired that comes from handling years of wild calls, and he gave Lily a respectful nod, though he clearly had no idea yet who she was talking to. "Ma'am, we're responding to a trespass call," he said, and Lily raised a brow, sipping her coffee like the whole situation bored her to death. "Oh yeah," she said, "I'm the trespasser apparently." And the younger officer blinked so hard his eyelids almost got stuck because he had no idea if this was sarcasm or truth. Dean could almost feel the moment the officers started realizing they had been dragged into pure HOA chaos, because there was no forced entry, no damage, no panic, no screaming, just 2 adults drinking coffee on their own porch with a confused beagle wagging its tail beside them like, "Hey, cops want breakfast." To the older officer cleared his throat, flipping through the report slowly. "The complainant stated that you were refusing to leave the property, ma'am." And Lily nodded politely, like she was at a business meeting, not being accused of breaking into her own home. "That's interesting," she said, "because I pay the mortgage here, I sleep here, I mow the lawn here, and I definitely did not break into anything except maybe the cereal box this morning." Dean tried not to laugh, but it bubbled up anyway, because the officers were clearly starting to see the cracks in Karen's story, and the younger one looked like he wanted to apologize on behalf of the entire police academy. Lily handed over her ID, mortgage info, utility bill, everything neatly organized, because she was calm even when she was mad, And while the officers stared at the documents trying to piece together how this situation even happened, Dean noticed movement across the street blinds shifting, and there she was, Karen, standing on her porch wearing a bright pink robe with her hair clipped back, fists tight at her sides like she was watching her evil plan unfold, and was confused that it wasn't working the way she wanted. Dean swore under his breath because the look on her face was not guilt or fear, it was annoyance, like how dare these people prove her wrong. And Lily saw her too, eyes narrowing slightly, not with anger, but with understanding, because bullies are predictable, and Karen was no exception. The officers finished their check, apologized 3 times and left, but the damage was already crawling under Lily's skin because she stood there staring at Karen, who was now pretending to water plants that absolutely did not need watering at 7:30 in the morning. And Lily whispered, "She thinks she can scare me out of my own home." Dean put a hand on her back and said, "Nobody is moving you from here, babe. Nobody." Lily breathed out slow and deep, like fire being contained, and her voice went soft but firm. "This isn't over, Dean," she said. "People like her don't stop just because they're wrong. They stop when they hit a wall, and I'm going to be that wall." By the time the cops pulled away and the blue and white cruisers disappeared around the cul-de-sac, Dean could still feel the tension buzzing in the air like a power line about to snap, and Lily stood on the porch staring down the street like she was trying to see the future, and the future did not look peaceful because she whispered softly, "This isn't the end, babe. This is just the warm-up." And the way she said it made Dean's stomach twist. Inside the house, the smell of bacon still hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of her peppermint toothpaste, and it should have felt like home, but everything felt tilted now, off balance, like someone had taken their safe space and cracked it with a hammer. Lily moved through the living room, slowly picking up her coffee mug again, gripping it like she needed something warm in her hands to keep the boiling anger in check. And Dean watched her throat work as she swallowed hard, still staring at the window, like Karen might materialize at any second. He set a hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into his touch just for a breath before straightening again, because vulnerability lasted half a heartbeat with Lily. And then the commander in her took back control. Dean opened the HOA Facebook group on his phone because he already knew Karen wouldn't let the morning end without blowing up the internet some more. And yep, there it was, already 10 new posts from Karen's account, all timestamped within 10 minutes, like she had been typing with both hands in a rage frenzy. "Residents be advised, unknown female remains on premises. We cannot allow instability. Board will take action. Safety, compromise, community standards at risk." Dean held the phone so Lily could see, and her jaw clenched so tight Dean could hear her teeth grind just a little because the misinformation was leaking all over the screen like poison. She took the phone from him, scanned every comment, every frightened neighbor, every dramatic exaggeration, like reading a crime scene report, and her eyes darkened. She whispered under her breath, "She's trying to turn them against us. She's trying to isolate us and make me look violent." Then she tossed the phone back to Dean and walked to the kitchen island, grabbing her tablet with that laser-focused energy that made even criminal suspects shut up and behave, because she was already building a counter plan in her head. She always did before she could open a single file. Though the doorbell rang, it was not a polite ring, it was an aggressive jab, like someone stabbing the button with their entire ego, and Dean already knew who it was before he even looked through the peephole. And sure enough, there stood Karen in her white robe, clipboard pinned to her chest, sunglasses too big for her face, even though it was cloudy now, and her mouth set in a tight little line that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." Dean opened the door a crack, but Lily stepped beside him before he could say a word, her chin lifting slightly the way she did when she needed to remind someone she could command entire divisions of officers without raising her voice. Karen didn't wait for a greeting. She never did. She just snapped the clipboard open like she was unveiling a new weapon and shoved a paper toward Lily. "This is an official notice," she announced, voice sharp enough to slice drywall. "You failed to submit your occupancy verification and you refused inspection. This is a violation of Maple Creek community standards." Lily didn't take the paper. She didn't even look at it. She just said calmly, "Karen, I already told you I live here." Karen scoffed, a dramatic theatrical scoff that made Dean want to drag her off the porch by her bathrobe. "Well, you can tell that to the board," she snapped, "or better yet to the sheriff when they have to escort you out." Dean almost laughed because Karen thought she had cards to play, but Lily wasn't just holding cards. She was holding the whole deck and the table and the building. The table was inside. Lily stepped forward just an inch, and Karen froze, Because even Karen wasn't stupid enough to mistake quiet for weakness. Lily said in a low, steady voice, "Do not ever misuse 911 again." Karen tried to speak, but Lily lifted her hand, a tiny gesture but powerful enough to shut her up, and Lily said, "The next time you use emergency services to harass me, I will make sure every agency involved knows exactly what you did." Karen's lips trembled for a half second before she snapped back into fake confidence. "You don't scare me," she hissed. Lily didn't blink, she didn't smirk, she didn't flinch. She just said, "I'm not trying to." Karen stomped off the porch, muttering under her breath, and Dean exhaled so hard he felt dizzy, because the air around them finally loosened like a valve releasing pressure. Lily turned away from the door, walked back into the house, and said, "We're going to the clubhouse at noon, and we're bringing everything." Dean nodded, because when Lily said everything, she meant everything. Every document, every email, every camera clip, every receipt, every little scrap of truth she could weaponize legally and calmly. And with the precision Karen lacked, they spent the rest of the morning gathering it all: mortgage documents, utility bills, security footage showing normal mornings and evenings, grocery bags and sunset walks and porch lights, and everything proving normal life, because apparently normal wasn't enough for Karen. Noon came fast. They walked into the clubhouse, and the whole room fell silent, like someone muted the world, because people respected authority. And even though Lily wasn't wearing her uniform, she carried command like a shadow around her. Karen sat at the head of the table with her arms crossed, smirking like she thought she had already won, and her eyes flicked over Lily like she was assessing a threat she didn't understand. The meeting started with Karen ranting about rules and safety and instability, but Lily let her talk. She just listened, nodded occasionally, like she was letting Karen dig her own hole deeper and deeper. Finally, Lily stood up and placed her folder on the table gently, like she was laying down evidence in court, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, clear, steady. "I am a legal resident of this home," she said. "I am the wife of the owner. My information is registered on every system that matters. I have followed every rule that applies to me, and the only instability in this neighborhood is the president, who misuses power to target people she doesn't like." Greg, the treasurer, swallowed so loud the sound echoed, and Karen's face went red, then pale, then red again, like she wasn't sure which emotion to feel first. Lily sat back down, hands folded, and the room stayed silent for a long breath, the kind of silence that happens when the truth finally steps into the light. Dean watched Karen's expression twist, because this wasn't going her way, and she knew it, and that terrified her more than anything else. The board didn't vote that day. They postponed everything, because nobody wanted to stand next to Karen while she was sinking, and everybody wanted to stand far away from the fire she started when Dean and Lily left the building. Lily said softly, "Karen will escalate now." Dean asked how she knew, and Lily said, "Because people like her don't back down. They go looking for higher ground, even when it's a cliff." And Dean knew right then that the war had only just begun. The hours after the HOA meeting felt like someone had hit pause on the whole neighborhood, because everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal, and Dean could see it in the way Lily moved through the house, like she was tracking invisible threats. The way her shoulders stayed tense even while she made a sandwich, the way she checked the window every few minutes like her instincts refused to relax. Maple Creek Estates looked peaceful from the outside, birds hopping on lawns, sprinklers throwing glittery arcs across the grass, kids biking in circles like they didn't notice the tension crawling under the surface. But the quiet had a weird static to it, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for Karen's next move. Dean sat at the dining table, watching Lily pace slowly while scrolling through her tablet, checking emails from the board, from dispatch from her department, and he could tell she was organizing everything in her head, like connecting dots on a crime board. Her mind already 3 steps ahead of whatever nonsense Karen was planning. He finally asked, "You think she's going to keep pushing, right?" And Lily didn't even look up. She just said, "Oh yeah, she's not done." Not even close, with that calm, tired certainty only someone who had dealt with a lifetime of bullies could have around. 4 in the afternoon, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Dean's phone buzzed nonstop until he finally grabbed it, expecting maybe some apology or some attempt to de-escalate. But nope, it was Karen again, dropping dramatic posts like she was delivering breaking news on national TV. She typed things like "unauthorized occupant still present" and "board reviewing emergency action" and "suspicious behavior documented around property." And Dean almost threw his phone because the delusion was unreal. Lily took the phone, read the messages slowly like she was studying evidence, and then she said she's trying to create a pattern, a narrative. If she can get enough people scared, she Thinks it'll pressure the board, Dean asked, scared of what, and Lily answered, simply scared of me, because that's what she wants, the image of a scary outsider, even though I've literally waved at these people every morning walking the dog just. Then a car drove slowly down their street, and Dean's stomach dropped, because it was Karen's white SUV eased down the road at 2 miles an hour, windows cracked, phone in her hand, and her head turned toward their house like a predator tracking. Pray she didn't honk, didn't stop, didn't wave. She just observed, and the look on her face wasn't confidence anymore. It was tight paranoia, like she needed to see with her own eyes that Lily was still there, breathing, still not backing down. And when the SUV turned the corner, Lily whispered, "She's checking to see if her lie is sticking." Dean sat down beside her, heart thumping with stress. Wonder how long she's going to play this game. Lily didn't blink. She just kept staring at the end of the street. Oh, she's going to escalate, because her ego is hurt, and people like her only know how to climb higher until they fall. That night, they sat on the porch, trying to let the cool evening settle their minds, fireflies blinking near the hedges, the sky fading from orange to blue to deep purple, and for a moment, it was almost peaceful, almost normal, almost the life they wanted when they bought the house. Then Lily stiffened her mug halfway to her lips as she whispered, "Listen," and Dean held his breath and heard it too, the soft crunch of gravel under slow, careful footsteps, someone walking down the road, someone not trying to be seen, but not hiding either. Dean stood up, ready to confront whoever it was, but Lily placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said in that low, controlled tone that made him freeze, and they both watched as a figure rounded the bend of the cul-de-sac and stepped into the glow of the street lamp. It wasn't Karen, not this time. It was Greg, the treasurer, clutching a clipboard to his chest, but walking like the clipboard was too heavy, like it carried guilt instead of paper, and he stopped halfway up their walkway, not daring to step closer, and Dean instantly knew something was wrong, because Greg was sweating like he had just outrun his conscience. "Evening," he called, voice shaky, and Lily stood up, calm but alert. "Greg, what's going on?" He swallowed hard, his eyes jumping between them like he expected someone to yell at him. I needed to talk to you both, and I didn't want to do it on the group chat, and I didn't want Karen to see me walking up here, but she probably will anyway." Lily stepped off the porch slowly, arms crossed. "What's this about, Greg?" He took a deep breath like he had practiced this speech in his car for an hour. "We messed up," he said softly. "The board messed up. I messed up. We let Karen run wild because she's loud and controlling, and she makes everyone feel like they'll get targeted next if they say no, and we ignored things we shouldn't have ignored, and now the whole neighborhood is on edge." Dean exchanged a quick look with Lily, because this was the first time anyone on that board admitted anything out loud. Greg held out a sheet of paper, hand trembling. "Karen filed more complaints today," he whispered. "Not just against you. She filed them against 2 other residents, minor things, petty things, and I think she's trying to create chaos to make herself look useful, to keep her power." Lily sighed, slow and heavy, like she had expected this. "Honestly," she whispered, "she can't stand being irrelevant." Greg nodded, wiping sweat off his brow. "I came because I'm done letting her drag us around by fear, and because we need your help, and because the board is too scared to say it directly. We need you to guide us. We need you to help write the new rules so this never happens again." Dean felt Lily go, still beside him, and for a moment, she didn't answer. She just studied Greg like she was trying to decide if he meant it, or if this was another attempt to control the narrative. Finally, she said quietly, "I'll help you, but I'm not leading anything. I'm not taking power. I'm not becoming president. I'm just preventing another Karen from popping up." Greg nodded fast. Thank you more than you know." And then he hurried away down the road like he was scared Karen might jump out of a bush and interrogate him for betraying her empire. Once he was gone, Dean turned to Lily. "You think this will calm things down?" Lily didn't even look convinced. "No," she said softly, "because this is humiliation for her, and humiliation always makes people like her get reckless." Dean felt a chill crawl up his spine. "So what now?" Lily looked toward the dark end of the street where Karen's SUV usually prowled and whispered, "Now we prepare." That night, they barely slept. Lily lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking 3 steps ahead, Dean tossing side to side, feeling the tension pulsing between them, and somewhere in the back of both their minds, the same question echoed, "What will Karen try tomorrow?" And the question didn't take long to answer, because the next morning began with the loud whir of something unnatural outside their bedroom window, a sound like a mechanical insect buzzing too close. And when Dean opened the curtain, he saw Ida, drone hovering 6 feet from the glass, red recording light blinking like an eye full of spite, watching them like prey. And that's when the real war began. The drone hung outside their bedroom window like some creepy robot mosquito, buzzing low and steady, and Dean felt his whole chest tighten, because this wasn't just petty anymore, this was straight-up stalking, and the blinking red light kept pulsing. Over and over like it was winking at them, and Lily stood behind him, arms folded, jaw locked, eyes cold in that scary quiet way she had. When she was done being patient, Dean pushed the curtain aside, slowly, hoping maybe the drone would fly away, but nope, it tilted toward him like it recognized him, like it was thinking, "Hey bro, smile for the HOA security camera." And Dean muttered under his breath, "What the hell is this now?" Because he already had a very good guess who was behind it. Lily didn't even flinch. She just said calmly, "She's collecting footage, or trying to," and Dean's heart dropped, because he knew that meant Karen was trying to bait them into reacting, stumbling, yelling, anything she could twist into drama fuel and use as ammunition. In her little HOA power war, Lily walked downstairs, grabbed her tablet, and started reviewing their home security feed almost casually, like she'd done it 1,000 times before, and Dean watched her fingers move fast, tapping, zooming, saving timestamps, sending clips to folders he didn't even know existed, and her face was so calm it scared him more than if she'd shouted. He kept looking at the drone outside until it finally drifted back like a nosy bug retreating, and he said, "Babe, we gotta call somebody," and Lily shook her head, already dialing a number on her phone. "Not somebody," she said. "Everyone." Within minutes, she was on the line with the cyber crimes unit, explaining unauthorized drone surveillance, unauthorized access attempts, and harassment by a private citizen. Her voice, smooth, steady, lethal, and Dean realized she wasn't just filing a report, she was laying out a whole case like bricks in a wall, stacking every piece of evidence until the structure was unbreakable. She forwarded the drone footage to 3 agencies, then sat down at the dining table, leaning back slightly, like she was finally letting herself process the anger boiling under her skin, and Dean sat across from her, seeing how exhausted she looked, but also how sharp and focused she still was, like she wasn't slowing down until justice hit Karen like a truck. Then the doorbell rang. Dean felt his stomach drop, because nobody normal rang their bell this early, and Lily stood up, brushing invisible dust off her shirt, like she already knew this wasn't going to be good. And when Dean opened the door, he almost laughed, because life had a messed up sense of comedy. Karen was back, but this time, she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a young man in a cheap suit with a briefcase too shiny for someone who looked that nervous, and he kept fumbling with the latch like he wished he was anywhere else on earth. And Karen shoved him forward like he was her personal attack lawyer, and she said loudly, "Tell her." The lawyer cleared his throat, eyes darting between Lily and the porch railing, and he said, "Ma'am, I'm Stephen, representing the HOA advisory legal team. We've prepared a cease and desist regarding your unlawful occupation and refusal to comply with standard inspections. If you continue to resist." Lily lifted one hand just slightly, and Stephen stopped mid-sentence like someone pressed pause on his brain, and Dean had to bite his lip, because even though Lily wasn't yelling, she had this energy that could stop a train. "Lily," said Stephen, "do you know who I am?" And the guy blinked in confusion, turning to Karen for guidance. But Karen just nodded like, keep going, she's not that important." And Lily continued, "I'm Commander Lily Torres, Director of the State Police Operations, and every false report filed under your client's instruction is now part of an ongoing investigation." Stephen's face went white, then pink, then white again, and he took half a step back, clutching his briefcase like a shield, while Karen snapped her fingers like, "Pay attention to me, Stephen," and hissed, "Her title doesn't matter. She's destabilizing the community. She's a threat to HOA leadership." Lily turned her head slowly, like she was rotating a spotlight onto Karen, a spotlight that revealed everything. Her voice low but clear, "Authority doesn't come from clipboards, Karen. It comes from law and truth. And you haven't touched either in months." Karen's lips trembled, but she still tried to stand tall, though it looked more like a malfunctioning robot than confidence. And Lily held out her hand calmly and said, "Give me the drone controller." Karen blinked, shocked, like someone had asked her to donate a kidney, and stammered, "Excuse me." And Lily repeated it slower, "The controller." And after a long, tense moment, Karen dug into her oversized purse and pulled out the little black device like she was surrendering her crown. And when Lily took it and powered it off with one quiet click, it felt like a guillotine dropping clean and final. "Unauthorized surveillance device neutralized," Lily said calmly, and Stephen actually whispered, "Oh man," under his breath, like this had suddenly gone way above his pay grade. Karen spun on her heel and stomped away, yanking Stephen's sleeve like a panicked toddler dragging a parent through a mall, and Dean just stood there amazed that a woman could have so much entitlement and so little self-awareness packed into one human body when the door closed. Lily exhaled slow and deep, and Dean asked, "Was that legal?" And she shrugged. "Legal enough and satisfying, but the day wasn't done punching around sunset, the sky turning soft gold and blue." Lily was rinsing dishes when her phone buzzed with a number she recognized immediately, and she dried her hands on a towel before answering. "Evening, Halford. What's going on?" And Dean froze, because Judge Halford never called unless something serious was happening. The judge sounded tired, irritated. "Almost. Rachel, we have an emergency injunction request here filed by a civilian demanding removal of a dangerous, unregistered occupant from a residential property, and it names you." Dean's jaw dropped. Lily's eyes went dark, and she whispered, "Karen filed an injunction on me," and Halford sighed heavily. "It's messy. It's full of misused legal terms, copied HOA rules, random accusations. Half of it doesn't even make sense, and I'm rejecting it immediately. But Rachel, this woman isn't playing anymore. She's unraveling." Lily thanked him, hung up, and leaned both hands on the counter, head bowed, shoulders stiff, and Dean stepped behind her, pressing a hand between her shoulder blades, and she whispered, "She's cornered, and cornered people get reckless." Dean swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Lily lifted her head, eyes sharp with a new kind of fire. "Now we let the system handle her," she said. "Now she doesn't just face me, she faces the whole state." And the next morning, 2 black SUVs rolled into Maple Creek Estates, slow, silent, official, and heavy with authority, and that was the moment Dean knew nothing would be the same again. The 2 black SUVs rolled down the gravel road like shadows with engines, and Dean felt every hair on his arms rise, because these weren't local cops or HOA volunteers playing security guard. These were state investigators, the kind who didn't show up unless someone really messed up. And Lily stepped onto the porch, already knowing what this meant. Her face calm, her posture steady, like a soldier waiting for a briefing, and not a single drop of fear moved across her features. The SUVs stopped in perfect sync, dust curling around the tires like smoke, and 2 investigators stepped out, tall, stone-faced, sharp, in suits that screamed authority, and they approached with the kind of confidence you only get when the law is fully behind you. And the older one said, "Commander Torres, we're here to initiate a formal inquiry into community leadership abuse, false legal filings, and misuse of emergency access protocols within your HOA." And Dean almost laughed, because Karen wanted drama, she wanted power, and now she had pulled the attention of the state. Lily nodded politely, saying, "We'll cooperate fully," and she stood there like she'd been preparing for this moment since the first stupid violation notice showed up on their door. And Dean watched their whole world shift, the air growing heavy, but also lighter at the same time. Like this was both the storm and the sunlight breaking through it. The investigators stepped inside, reviewing evidence that Lily had neatly organized into folders like a war map. Emails, drone footage, the break in the fake complaints, the emergency key misuse, every piece labeled and time-stamped. And the investigators looked impressed, probably because most citizens submitted messy screenshots and panicked paragraphs. And here Lily had built an entire case file so airtight it could have been used in training seminars. By the afternoon, the investigators left, promising to deliver notices to the HOA board, and Dean leaned back in his chair, feeling something crack open inside him. Not fear, not worry, but relief, like they had finally flipped the biggest spotlight imaginable straight onto Karen's madness, and now she had nowhere to hide. The moment the SUVs left, the panic started inside the HOA board like someone dropped a snake in a kindergarten classroom. Emails flooded the neighborhood, app apologies, excuses, backpedaling, the whole board scrambling to distance themselves from Karen like mice fleeing a sinking ship. And one email from Greg said, "We fully support cooperation with the state, and we hope this misunderstanding can be resolved," which made Dean snort, because misunderstanding was the funniest lie he'd ever read. Karen, however, sent one email, not an apology, not an explanation, just one line: "This is being blown out of proportion, and I will resolve it personally." And Lily read it with the coldest expression Dean had ever seen, not angry, not annoyed, just done, completely done. And that evening, when the sun dipped behind the pines, painting everything orange and soft, the real twist happened. The part that felt almost unreal: a suspension notice got taped to Karen's door. Not a friendly warning, not a suggestion, a full official HOA leadership suspension, meaning she was stripped of authority, stripped of power, stripped of the little kingdom she'd built out of petty rules and neighborhood gossip. And Dean stood on the porch, with Lily watching from a distance as neighbors whispered and pointed, because even people who liked drama knew when Something was serious, and this was serious, but peace didn't come the next morning because peace never just strolls in after chaos. Instead, they woke up to a weird silence, the kind that feels too still, too heavy, like the world is holding its breath. And when Dean checked the mailbox, he found a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address, just their cabin number written in slanted, angry handwriting, the kind that made your stomach twist. He brought it inside, handed it to Lily, who opened it without hesitation, and inside was a bird feeder empty with a tiny folded note that read, "You may have won the board, but you don't control me. I'm everywhere." And Dean felt his blood go cold because this wasn't HOA drama. This was obsession. Lily studied the handwriting, analyzing it from top to bottom, and said, "This is symbolic. She wants to show she's still watching, still present, still trying to intimidate us. But this isn't strength, this is desperation." But the letters didn't stop. They multiplied like weeds. 10 packages in 3 days, gloves, seed packets, gardening junk, all useless, all creepy, all meant to send a message. But package number 10 was the one that made even Lily's jaw tighten, because when she opened it and saw the notebook filled with fake spreadsheets, doctored emails, and fabricated tax crimes, she realized Karen wasn't just attacking them anymore. She was preparing to burn down anyone near them. And right then a soft knock hit the door, and it was Vince, their quiet neighbor, the guy who baked cookies for everyone and ran taxes out of his basement. And he looked terrified, holding a piece of paper, his hands shaking like leaves in wind. And he whispered, "Rachel, I got this." The same kind of accusation, the same formatting, the same poison, but aimed at him. Lily read it and murmured, "She's expanding. She wants chaos. She wants everyone scared. She wants to isolate us by making enemies around us." And Vince whispered, "But why me? What did I do?" And Lily said, "You exist. And that's all it takes for someone like her." And Dean saw tears forming in Vince's eyes, and his heart broke because good people didn't deserve this. And Lily immediately got on the phone with cybercrimes, reporting everything calmly, professionally, like a general securing a battlefield. And Vince finally sighed in relief because someone believed him, someone protected him, someone fought for him. But the scariest part wasn't Karen anymore. It was what Lily said later that night when she sat at the dining table surrounded by evidence. In silence, someone else is involved, and Dean froze. "Somebody else," and Lily nodded, saying, "Karen's unhinged, but she's not sloppy. This new email, this new style, this new attempt, this is someone trying to imitate her," which means Karen created something, a power vacuum, a blueprint, a shadow. Someone else now wants to occupy. Dean felt his stomach drop like a stone and whispered, "You think she knows?" And Lily shook her head, "Not yet, but she will. And when she does, the whole thing will explode." And Dean realized the story wasn't about a crazy HOA president anymore. It was about everything she had infected, everything she had stirred, everything she had awakened in the people around her. And Lily looked out the window, her voice low, steady, unshakably calm, when she said, "We're not just stopping her anymore. We're stopping what she started." Dean knew then the war wasn't ending, it was evolving, and Lily was preparing to fight something bigger than Karen, something darker, something that didn't care about bylaws or meetings, something that wanted the throne. Karen had lost, and he knew Lily wasn't backing down, not now, not ever. The next week rolled in, slow and heavy like storm clouds that pretended they weren't storms, and Dean could feel the tension in the air. Even when nothing was happening, the lake was calm, the porch was quiet, neighbors waved again. But there was still this weird pressure in the air, like the whole community was bracing for a punch they couldn't see, and Lily moved through each day with that laser focus she always had when she knew something bigger was brewing. And even though she tried to act normal, Dean could tell she was listening for things, smelling for things, watching shadows, like she expected the next wave at any moment. She spent her mornings with the new HOA charter team, rebuilding rules from scratch, making sure nothing like Karen could ever rise again. Term limits, transparency, no more hidden bylaws, no more secret inspections, no more power trips disguised as leadership. And everyone respected her even when she insisted she wouldn't take a title. She didn't want leadership, she wanted prevention, and people admired her for it because she wasn't doing this for control. She was doing this because she saw the cracks and wanted to seal them before someone else slipped through. But the nights were different. The nights were where the silence felt too thick, where the wind crawled through the pines like a warning. And Dean noticed that Lily checked the windows twice instead of once, that she locked the door slower, like she was thinking, and that her shoulders stayed tight even when she tried to relax on the couch. And Dean hated it because Lily deserved peace. She fought for it, she earned it, and yet she still moved like someone expecting a blow, and the blow came on a Wednesday. It didn't roar and it didn't smash and it whispered, and Dean went to the mailbox like it was a normal day, humming a tune, thinking about coffee and pancakes and the stupid bird feeder that Karen left. And when he opened the mailbox, he saw the envelope immediately white. Thin, no stamp, no return address, just their cabin number written in that same slanted red handwriting that made his stomach twist. And he called Lily over because he wasn't touching this alone, and she opened it with calm fingers, and inside was just a single line typed in black ink. I never left, no threats, no details, no signature, just presence. And it felt worse than anything Karen had ever done, because this wasn't yelling or drone flying or breaking in. This was silence pretending to be harmless. And Lily slid the paper into a plastic evidence sleeve immediately and walked straight to her office, saying nothing, her eyes cold, focused, already working, already connecting dots. And Dean followed her, heart pounding, because whatever that letter meant, it wasn't over. Within minutes, Lily was running searches through the state filing portal, checking recent HOA registrations, checking new applications, checking identity variations, and her fingers paused, suddenly, like she'd found the missing puzzle piece. And she leaned back, whispering, "Oh, you clever, desperate liar," and Dean leaned over her shoulder and saw it, a brand new HOA registration 20 minutes away, a tiny development, 9 houses, new construction, and its listed agent was Cassandra Arkeen. And the moment Lily said her full name, Karen Cassandra Pinebrook, Dean felt heat rush into his face, because this wasn't just desperation, this was reinvention. Karen wasn't escaping, she was relocating, she was rebuilding, she was starting over where her name wasn't already covered in red flags and neighbor rumors and ethics investigations. And Lily shook her head slowly, saying she's trying to build a new kingdom, but she's not bringing her poison to anyone else. And Dean watched her grab the evidence binder files and her tablet, and she said, "Come on, we're taking a drive." And he didn't argue, because when Lily used that tone you followed, the sun was dipping low when they reached the new development, the sky turning gold and lavender, and the cul-de-sac looked so peaceful. Half-built houses, contractors carrying lumber, fresh concrete, and sawdust floating in the air, and there, standing in the middle of the construction zone, like she owned the land, was Karen, her hair tied in a tight bun, her blouse crisp, her sunglasses reflecting the fading sun, and her clipboard held like it was a badge of royalty. Karen was giving orders to 2 confused contractors, pointing at a blueprint like she'd been running the place for months. And then, as if sensing Lily's presence, she turned and froze, her jaw tightening, her posture straightening, like she'd been caught doing something she didn't want witnessed. And Lily didn't leave the truck, she didn't march over, she didn't yell, she just watched her calmly, like she was observing an animal marking territory. And Karen's confidence cracked right there like glass under pressure, because power meant nothing when someone knew exactly how you abused it. Karen turned away, pretending to focus on the blueprint, but her shoulders stiffened and her hands shook just slightly. And Lily didn't smile, didn't smirk, she just sighed, like she was tired of seeing the same cycle repeat, and said quietly, "She thinks she can outrun consequences, but she'll learn you can't outrun documentation." And she was right, because the next day Lily filed an injunction request under fraud review protocols, tying Karen's new application to her suspended status at Maple Creek Inn. Within 2 days, the advisory panel froze her application, halted funding, flagged her identity variations, and placed the entire homeowners group under state audit. And Karen probably thought the universe was punishing her, but Lily knew better. Systems only work when someone forces them to open their eyes, and Lily did exactly that. Life at Maple Creek slowly returned to something like calm. Neighbors smiled again, kids rode bikes, Vince relaxed for the first time in weeks, and even Dean slept without waking up to check the windows. And Lily pulled back from leadership entirely, helping only when asked, guiding quietly, staying behind the scenes, because she didn't want control, she wanted stability for everyone. A month passed, then another, and the lake shimmered under the summer sun like it had finally forgiven everything. And Dean started thinking, maybe finally this was it, the end, the closure. But Lily didn't celebrate, she didn't brag, she simply exhaled slowly every time she looked at the water, like peace felt new and fragile and precious. Then one morning a letter arrived from the State Commission, not from Karen, not anonymous, not threatening, just official, clean, final. And Lily opened it, reading slowly, then handing it to Dean, and the document officially permanently banned Karen from ever holding any HOA or community governance role statewide under any name, any variation, any identity. And Dean let out a breath. He didn't realize he'd been holding because this was the end, not a pause, not a break, nada. Trick and actual, in that night, they sat on the dock, legs dangling over the water, warm air brushing their skin, the lake shimmering like a mirror of stars, and Dean whispered, "She's not coming back, right?" And Lily shook her head. "She can't, not anywhere with power." And Dean asked, "Because she's scared?" And Lily said softly, "No, because there's nowhere left for her to hide." And for the first time since the war began, Dean felt real peace, the kind that didn't tremble, the kind that didn't hide behind silence, the kind that comes when justice finally catches up.